Hi, I'm Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest YouTube video and podcast. Today I'm going to step backwards just a little bit. I'm going to talk about the term self-love deficit disorder. Why 8 years ago did I make that term so important to the world, to my life, to me? Why was I so convinced that the word codependency, the term, the understanding of it, the treatment of it, why was I so convinced that we had to replace it with another term? Well, this is what this video or podcast is going to be about. I want to go all the way back to my psychotherapy origins. I started in the psychotherapy field 1988, almost 37 years ago. My first job required me to do a little bit of anything and everything without quite knowing what I was doing. Unfortunately, that's the plight of many new psychotherapists. We learn on the job. Little did I know I was going to be working with codependents. I didn't really know what codependency was, but I started to notice a pattern with some of my clients. They were beaten down, they were weakened, they were sad, they were lonely, and complained about a partner who completely controlled them, ridiculed them, manipulated them. Over time, it was clear to me a certain type of person was in a relationship with another certain type of person. If they were codependent, as I understood back then, which was a term that was popularized by Melody Beattie's book, Codependent No More, published in 1986. That book was a blockbuster. It was the first book to talk about codependency, or what some people call codependence. Before it, there wasn't anything out there that quite said exactly what this codependence or codependency thing is. And she borrowed all of her knowledge from all the people that preceded her, mainly people in the 12-step treatment industry, the mental health industry. There wasn't really a lot of information out there on this codependency thing, but it was all I had to work with. I started going to workshops. I remember being profoundly impacted by the work of Terry Kellogg, John Friel, among others. So it became clear that codependents were people that were passive, compliant, they took care of other people, they always fell victim to a certain type of person that could manipulate them, get into their head, keep them from leaving, convince them that they are loved, convince them that they love them. So began my career working with codependents, and I worked with them off and on for the next 15 years. But over time, I became more and more frustrated with the term codependency, codependent, codependence. I didn't like the word at all. I hated it. I know that's a strong term, but I did. In 2011, I was hired by a company, the biggest company in the United States that specifically trains counselors and psychotherapists. They contacted me and asked me to do a training on codependence and what they called emotional manipulators. I was ecstatic. I had been trying to get a good job in the professional training field for quite a while, and they were the best. But I had to do it on a title that they absolutely required me to do. It was codependence and emotional manipulators. So I don't want to get off track, but eventually I would change the term emotional manipulator into pathological narcissist so that I could use my own new ideas, what was coming to be that eventually would be my first human magnet syndrome book. I could use these ideas about codependence, falling in love with and becoming attracted the narcissist. The idea that led me to what would become the human magnet syndrome, the idea that codependents and narcissists are almost magnetically attracted to each other. Their opposite personalities fit hand in glove, like a dancing couple. The fixer and the pleaser naturally fits in with the needer and the taker. Their opposite personalities fit, and it becomes a coordinated yet dysfunctional relationship within which the codependent is frozen from leaving because of their absolute fear and dread of pathological loneliness and the power the narcissist has over them. And should they leave, the amount of manipulation or coercion that will be used against them to pull them back. So in 2012, I started talking to a lot of people about codependency and narcissism. I traveled to around 60 different cities in a period of 2 years. I was all over the place giving the same training, which over time, it expanded, it progressed as I started to figure out this codependency narcissist thing. Early on, I created the idea that I needed to define codependency as something specific, a mental health disorder that had as much specificity as if you were trying to diagnose someone with another mental health disorder, say ADHD, depression, or anxiety. It had to have discernible and specific diagnostic criterion that the person would have to be matched up with before you could arrive at a diagnosis. Because this whole codependency thing, this whole codependency made no sense to me. It seemed like everyone was a codependent. So many different definitions. Melody Beattie had a definition. Terry Kellogg, John Friel, the Codependency Anonymous, different books, different treatment centers, they all professed to be working with the same type of person, but they had different explanations and different descriptions. And not only did I dislike the term codependency, I was determined to change it before I came up with the updated term self-love deficit disorder. So I simply defined codependency as someone who gives all the love, respect, caring, trust, and protection. Wants it returned, their partner doesn't give it to them because they're narcissistic, and they stayed. Boom, that was it. It didn't matter about all of the different traits that people said codependents were. Too giving, too likable, sacrificing, controlling. What I decided was the core and the heart of codependency was a distribution of love, respect, caring, trust, and protection. It wasn't personality traits. And what that allowed me to do, it allowed me to diagnose my clients and develop this understanding that codependency also manifested in personality types. And that's when I came up with this idea of active, passive, and anorexic codependence. I basically said, nothing changes. The person has to be in a relationship with the disparity or inequity of the love, respect, caring, trust, and protection, but they have a different personality type. If you feel stuck in painful relationship patterns, you're not alone. I've already helped thousands break free from what I call self-love deficit disorder and how to finally choose self-love over the insanity you create for yourselves. Work with me. My psychotherapy can help. And my idea at the time was codependents look differently. There is no one type of codependent personality because there was such a wide, almost shotgun-like approach to try to fit all codependents in this one narrow understanding, but yet everyone came up with their own explanation. So I simplified it. So now we had different types of codependents who also and always were involved in a love, respect, caring, trust, and protection, unequal relationship. And I developed that, and it fit. And over time, I developed more personality types and espoused the idea that codependents, no matter what type of personality type they are, they all share common traits. And this allowed for people to understand that you had manipulative codependents, angry codependents, alcoholic codependents, dishonest codependents, loving, sincere, compassionate codependents. It opened up an avenue so that people can see that codependency was at the very heart understood it with respects to the dynamics that pull them to stay in a relationship, pull them to be in a relationship, to make them stay in a relationship, and ultimately trap them into it. Even with my advances on understanding codependency, I still did not like the term. I didn't. I remember disliking it so much, I started using the term chronic caretaker. Everyone loved that. Oh yeah, that's a really good term, chronic caretaker. To me, that seemed more universal than this watered down word codependency that meant so many different things to so many different people. And then one day, I actually remember the day. It was impacted by a friend named Tracy Richards. I hope she sees this video. Thank you, Tracy. But Tracy and I met in New York. We did a video with Harville Hendricks. It was a lot of fun. It was exciting. And Tracy, this person who was this wonderful psychotherapist who I never met before, just talked about self-love. Her thing was self-love is everything in relationships and psychotherapy. And at first I was thinking, well, that's a little bit narrow. And I would talk about my point of view, which was a little bit broader. But it wasn't until later, I sat and I remember I was sitting in my writing chair, this old recliner I had that I used to love writing in, and it hit me. Self-love deficit, deficiency. What ties all codependents together is this deficiency in self-love. It's universal. If a person has self-love, they are not going to be attracted to narcissists. Their broken picker, as I talk about in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, it's not broken. It directs them away from other self-love deficient, narcissistic people towards fellow self-love abundant people. And that's where I hit it big. It was a lottery for me. Wow. Self-love deficit disorder. Everyone I talked to, they loved it. They absolutely loved it. There wasn't anyone who said they didn't like it. And at that time, I was out in front of a lot of people giving professional trainings. I owned a counseling center with 11 or 12 psychotherapists. I was supervising. Everyone liked it. There was no resistance in using it to replace codependency. And somewhere along my path, I decided I have to come up with the constituent components of self-love deficit disorder. The definition was, as it was for codependency, someone who gives all the love, respect, caring, trust, and protection in a relationship, wants it to be equal. It's not in a state. But what made self-love deficit disorder, or SLDD? And I created a pyramid. And over time, the pyramid explanation evolved to eventually, at the very base of the pyramid was attachment trauma, the trauma that all adult codependents went through in their childhood because of a parent who was pathologically narcissistic. From the attachment trauma was core shame, this fundamental belief that you are unlovable, that you are imperfect, that no one will quite love you and like you because you are fundamentally broken, not right. From the core shame is this existential pain I call pathological loneliness. It's this bone-aching pain of loneliness that when you are not in a relationship, you don't feel yourself. You feel sad, depressed, lonely, incomplete. It only goes away if you're in a relationship. So then the next level, codependency or SLDD addiction. And that was this addictive pursuit of a relationship to make the pain of loneliness go away. The addiction idea really helped my clients understand why it was so hard to leave a narcissist and why they would relapse. And then I would use the pathological loneliness as a withdrawal symptom. It fit perfectly. And then at the very top of the pyramid are all the symptoms, all the traits that we know to be codependency or self-love deficit disorder. And there is a myriad of traits, and they are different depending on the personality type. So now I had this new term, self-love deficit disorder. Codependency, as far as I was concerned, I kicked it to the curb. I started talking about what creates it, and the next stage for me was to create a treatment program that permanently resolved the SLDD by working on all the levels it was created. And that program evolved from a 4-stage to 11-stage treatment program that I call my self-love recovery treatment program. And the goal of the treatment program was to take self-love deficit disorder and neutralize it. If you can solve the attachment trauma, remember, we're going back to the pyramid. You can solve the core shame. You can solve the pathological loneliness, the addiction, and ultimately all the little symptoms and behavioral components that make SLDD or codependency, then the person starts to love themselves and they become self-love abundant. And the way I looked at it, that was the cure. The cure, the permanent, lasting state of being where you can love yourself enough to take care of yourself. Because of that, your unconscious attraction patterns would shift. What was once a broken picker, and for those who are listening to my podcast, they can't see me hold out my index finger and curve it. The broken picker that always chose a narcissist, now the picker is going to choose someone who also is self-love abundant and back away from someone who is narcissistic. The human magnet syndrome still works. It just changes in its properties. So I then decided I want to create a self-love abundance pyramid that directly is in opposition of the SLDD pyramid. The attachment trauma became the resolved and integrated attachment trauma. The core shame became core self-love. The pathological loneliness became existential peace. And the addiction became a sense of calm that motivated a person to maintain self-love abundance in their life. And at the very top of the pyramid are all the reasons or symptoms of being self-love abundant. And that became the bricks and the mortar of my treatment program and everything that I do now. So today I was thinking about the origins of self-love deficit disorder, the origins of codependency. I'm actually writing a revised edition to a book that I published 1.5 years ago. This is my masterpiece. It's almost a 400-page book that has everything that I know about self-love deficit disorder, self-love recovery, everything. It was time to revise it. 2 years later, my ideas became more clear. The way that I articulated my explanations were more clear. They were more evolved. They were more integrated. It was an update. I didn't want to write another book. I didn't want to write another edition. I just wanted to update it. And I spent the last week rewriting the chapter on codependency. And I was fully immersed in this chapter, which I explained for 40 pages, the exact history of codependency, what was it, and what it is now. It inspired me to connect with you guys. And for those who haven't known me, there's a lot of people who just found out about me. I have been saying this self-love deficit disorder thing for, 8 years, and I've been talking about codependence and relationships, codependence and pathological narcissism, the human magnet syndrome, for 13 years. There's a whole new world of younger people out there who are discovering my work, and I wanted to give you a little bit of background of what I do and what makes me tick. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a mental health practitioner who from the very beginning gravitated towards methods or techniques that solve the problems that were responsible for the symptoms or behaviors that brought someone into therapy. That therapy really was about someone complaining about some aspect of their life, and they would confuse the symptoms with the problems. And that was the problem that I ultimately learned with codependency and eventually self-love deficit disorder, is it is not the symptoms. It is a trauma disorder that is heavily influenced by core shame, pathological loneliness, this existential dread and pain and addiction to a relationship. They're not addicted to narcissists. They're addicted to being in a relationship so they don't feel the bone-aching loneliness. So I hope for you guys who are new, who are discovering my work, this helped you understand the broader context of what I'm doing. For those that have been hanging around for the last 13 years, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. You guys rock, and I always appreciate your support. So before I close, let me tell you about a couple things. One is I recently wrote the Human Magnet Syndrome Workbook. It is written to go together as a companion book to both the Human Magnet Syndrome and the Codependency Revolution. Every chapter aligns with both books. For example, it'll say chapter 1 corresponds with chapter 3 and chapter 4 in the Codependency Revolution. And it is a companion workbook that helps people understand themselves more. It teaches them, it guides them, it asks questions, and it really gets someone thinking and working on their codependency, their self-love deficit disorder, so that they can move towards self-love abundance. This is great. I promise you'll love it. I also have a Patreon program that has exclusive content that only subscribers can get. If you're interested in that, go to my website, selfloverecovery.com. My company is called Self-Love Recovery Institute. The website is selfloverecovery.com. In there, you'll find educational material that is in video and audio talking about all aspects of my work that you can purchase and find very helpful and illuminating. Should you be interested in seeking my psychotherapy, whether it's for general purposes or the self-love recovery treatment program, hey, I'm here. I even lowered my fee. I brought it down 30%. Now it's only $225, formerly $315. And your first session is $199. Okay, guys, enough of my commercial. Thank you very much for the support along all the years. And for you new folks, well, welcome. I hope this is illuminating, motivating, and helpful. You do take care. Bye-bye. If you feel stuck in painful relationship patterns, you're not alone. I've already helped thousands break free from what I call self-love deficit disorder and how to finally choose self-love over the insanity you create for yourselves. Work with me. My psychotherapy can help.